And boom, I've been counting down with that timer and so happy to be in front of you guys tonight. So hello, BPTN. Thank you guys for joining us for yet another masterclass. You know, we've been feeling the good vibes with these masterclasses over the past few weeks. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's time to keep the good vibes going because we are here tonight to do it again. And you guys, I want you to remember that we are here and you can join us each and every Thursday night. We're going to bring you tons of free gems and engaging conversations from around the tech world. So my name is Cher Jones. If we have not met yet, I'm a corporate trainer, keynote speaker, and the founder of Socially Active Training. Right now, in this moment, in this second, I'm in my studio here in Toronto, but I want to know, where are you at? Let me know in the chat because you guys know that this is a global community. We got people from all over the world joining us, and I want to know where are you hailing from right now. So let's see. Hey, I see Carlene from Toronto, Vancouver, Diana. This is Ireland. All right. Yes, we got like I said, representation from around the world. Toronto, lots of Toronto folks tonight. Where are my Americans? Because I know y'all roll up in in our chat as well. So again, keep letting people know where you from, where you at. Let me see. Charlotte, yep. Montreal, Montreal's here. Lots of people. Cucamonga, I think that's what I read. Yes. Colorado. All right. So like I said, you see this? You see this? This is a global community for you guys. Massachusetts, Brooklyn. That's right. Brooklyn's finest. There you go. But is it the Brooklyn, Ontario? No, that was Brooklyn, probably New York City. So that is cool. All right, guys. So keep on letting people know where you are in the chat. And if you are a BPTN or Obsidi OG, then you already know. But if you don't, no, we just launched this brand new platform called Obsidi.com. It is a platform made by Black professionals for Black professionals. And trust me, it's preparing to be the next big thing in the tech world. This is our global platform for Black professionals in tech to connect 365 days of the year so that we can learn, grow, and build our careers together. And also to connect with our partners because our partners want to get connected with you. So, because I'm very curious, you know me, I'm always asking questions. I want to know, who is an Obsidi.com member? I want you to say yes in the chat. And I want to make sure that if you are an Obsidi.com member, how come we're not connected yet? Can you go and fix that like right now? And so that all you have to do to fix that is head over to Obsidi.com. And of course, everybody who's saying, yes, I'm an Obsidi member, you need to connect with them as well. And you can find me if you just search Cher Jones. I'm telling you, you'll find me. Then we can get connected. Also, you want to let everybody know in the chat how they can find you. So just drop your name in the chat so people can find you. And of course, if you haven't signed up yet and you like this masterclass kind of vibe, then you need to stay connected. So right now, sign up at Obsidi.com and become a member so you can get networking. And when you do that, do not, I repeat, do not be selfish. Get your friends to sign up too. It's a community, it's an opportunity, and it is a great place to network and grow your career. All right, because it is time to build your tribe. And we want to see, you'll see that link in the chat right now. So Obsidi.com, that's where you want to go. And this is also a great place to connect and show how smart you are, what you're learning. So you are hanging out with us tonight. Trust and believe there are going to be gems upon gems upon gems. And we would love for you to share your favorite gem on Obsidi.com because there's people who didn't get to hang out with us tonight and they're going to want to learn what you learned and you get to show off a little bit. So as you're watching tonight, think about the content that you're going to share tomorrow or after the show on Obsidi.com. So definitely want to do that. And also you can vibe out with the community and build your own peer group week after week inside the network. All right. So we are all aware that representation and inclusivity are some of the aspects in marketing design that brands and businesses are struggling with. No kidding. We still only see certain people from certain backgrounds with certain characteristics at the forefront of communications initiatives, while people who are different and unique kind of take the back seat in terms of representation. This is something that I'm sure we all agree needs to be changed in the real world. But now, my friends, enter the metaverse. The metaverse is a virtual shared world that's an expressive and creative extension of the real world. It is a new era where we will essentially live in a digital world. Are you guys ready for this? I'm kind of ready. I'm like half in, half out. But as we make this exciting digital shift, brands need to find new ways to leverage inclusive designs if they want to thrive in the metaverse. So, tonight we are going to be discussing the importance of inclusivity and representation within design and advertising from a technological perspective. I mean, it is BPTN after all. And of course, we are going to hear insight from leading people in the tech industry. So get yourself mentally ready because this is going to go real deep. Like, I mean, 8 clicks deep at least. But before we move on, I want to thank our partner, Shutterstock, for bringing yet another insightful conversation to BPTN. So thank you, Shutterstock. And while I'm at it, I also want to wish all of y'all a very happy Black History Month. You know, BPTN, we stay betting on Black 24/7, 365, but we are also very happy that you are a part of the movement. And it's hard to believe that we are already halfway through the month. But here's the thing, we never stop showing off our Black excellence. So thank you for being here during this amazing month and keep the love going all year long. So now, inclusivity and representations are concepts that we as consumers fight for. And they're not only about race, but they entail everything from sexual orientation, gender identity, professional experience, ability, and more. We all want to feel included no matter where we are. So here's the thing, I got a question for you. Has representation or lack of it affected how you see yourself as an individual? Say yes or no in the chat. And it's interesting because when I think about showing up to a professional BPTN event and I hear music that I identify with and recognize, that's representation for me and I'm loving it. So let me know in the chat if you've ever been affected by representation. So let us know in the chat. So I hear no, I see some yes. That lack of representation, let me see what that comment said, affected me for sure. Yes. Yep. That's that's it. And you definitely we're seeing that, and that is going to continue. It affects us, and affects us both positively and negatively, and that's what we're going to have these conversations tonight because we really want to be able to push that dial, move it in a way that we feel represented. You guys have all seen those images where a little girl is seeing an image of herself in leadership and all of a sudden seeing that different way of looking at things. So thank you guys for sharing. Again, continue connecting in the chat. But of course, I got another question for you. Do you think, okay, do you think we will see more inclusivity and representation in the near future? Okay, is it like glass half full, glass half empty for you? Yes or no in the chat. Let me know. Do you think that we're going to see more inclusivity in the future? I'm going to bet on yes, because that's exactly what I want to see. And we do see some brands really moving the dial. And yes, for sure. Definitely yes. That's exactly it. We got to. There's no other choice. There's no going back. Guys, continue to blow up the chat and with your responses, because tonight we're going to be discussing the topic in great depth. And I'm absolutely 100% sure you're going to be leaving well informed. So remember, think about what do you want to post about when you're done? What have you learned? So take those notes because I know that you guys are going to get something out of this tonight. So let me walk you through tonight's value-packed agenda so we can take a look at what's going on. All right, so you see already, I'm doing the welcoming and the housekeeping. And then we have this awesome fireside chat that yours truly gets to moderate. And then we head into the leadership panel and back over to the tunes. So this is what's going on. You guys got to see the names there, got to get connected. And of course, while you're getting connected, I want to make sure that you are there and ready for these masterclasses by connecting with us on social. As you can see, we've upgraded our social handles. So everything is Obsidy by BPTN. And of course, you can always follow, tag, tweet, and use that hashtag Obsidy by BPTN. And I'm going to say it. You're going to hear me all night. Head over to obsidian.com to make sure that you're posting over there and that you're connected and that you are a member. So next thing, I have a question for you. How many of you guys are here for the very first time? If you are, that's okay. Type one, the number one in the chat. And all of you who are not our first timers, I'd like to welcome you back. You know my OGs, so y'all can type OG in the chat. But if you are new, I see Max and Kyrie's new, and Cheryl and Maria. Look at all these, and I see my OGs up in there too. All right, so guys, welcome. I'm going to give you just a few tips on what's going on tonight so that you guys can get so comfortable, because you can already see that chat is blowing up. It's going to continue to blow up throughout the night. So make sure you're using it before, during, and after all of our events. And of course, there's a little tiny tab that if you have to submit a question, if you want to get a question answered, you can put your question in there, and the moderators will make sure that they're taking a look at that if time permits. As well, all of our master classes are recording. So if you just know that there's so many gems that somebody else needs to see, you can go and access them as well after the event. And you can customize your screen. So all these windows, you can move them around. You can make them bigger. You can make them smaller. You should see how I've customized mine to make it okay for how I do my work tonight. But don't worry, you cannot break the internet. If you feel that you move things around, you don't like it, there's a little arrow with a little circular arrow. Just hit that. We'll restore everything back to its default, so you're all good. And of course, there's buttons with speaker bios, slides being used today, member info, and so much more. So definitely get in there, play with it, have fun, and enjoy tonight's masterclass. Like, I mean, there's so much to learn tonight. So next up, while you are enjoying the masterclass, while you're learning, this is also an opportunity for growing your career, that is. And we have talent acquisition reps. So we have Amber and Max. They are both in the chat. And also you can connect with them on obsidian.com. So you want to make sure that you connect with them tonight. And also create those opportunities, those networking opportunities, because they are the ones that you want to talk with. All right. So make sure you're networking. Make sure you're connecting. Make sure you're growing and note taking. That's a lot of rules, but it's okay. It's because I care. So don't worry about it. But guess what? I have a quick trivia question before we begin the conversation, and I want to see if you know the right answer. So on the screen, you're going to see our question for the night, and you'll also be able to choose your options. So just click the right answer if you think you got the right answer, and then we'll go from there. So the question is, who came up with Black History Month? Was it Martin Luther King Jr., Harriet Tubman, Carter G. Woodson, or Rosa Parks? Get clicking and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. I already know the answer, so I can't. Well, yeah, I'll still participate, because why not? All right, guys. So let's see what the answer is. And all right, so most of you guys got it. 82% of you guys got it. It is Carter G. Wilson. So thank you guys so much for participating in our little trivia question, because we have fun with them. We like them. And I'm sure that you guys are already pumped up and ready for the main attractions for tonight, because we have a power-packed panel that is coming later on in the evening. But right now, when they do come, they're going to give you key insights into inclusivity and representation from a digital perspective. But first, got to slow down my energy for a little bit, because we are moving on into our fireside chat. And this is going to blow your mind. So much for slowing down my energy. But let me invite tonight's speakers onto the stage. First up, I have Alessandra Sala. Hi, Alessandra, how are you?
Hello, do you hear me?
I hear you perfectly.
Thanks
Well,
for
it's one.
having me tonight. Your
Awesome.
energy has pumped me up so much. Lovely.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Because trust me, there's more where that came from. People still wonder, like, Cher, What's up? But anyways, it's okay. I'm going to let everybody know about you. You are the director of AI and data science at Shutterstock, which is super cool. And as the global president of Women in AI, Alessandra is devoted to supporting this community of women and minorities by providing the means for growing knowledge and technical expertise in AI. So welcome again. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. All right, up next is Miquel Beecher. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm even better now that I get to see your face. All
Your
right, so
energy is amazing. That's Alessandra just said.
thank you so much. Let's let everybody know a little bit about you. For those of you who don't know as of yet, Miquel is currently the global head of DEI at Shutterstock, where he leads the creation and implementation of the company's DEI strategies and initiatives. His work in DEI and social impact experience is bolstered by his well-regarded expertise in campaign management, content creation, and communication. So again, welcome, Miquel. Nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I have both, and let me just fix up my screen. So just like you guys play around with your screens, and I do that as well so I can see and then also see my questions so that we have a fantastic chat tonight. I would like to start by finding out a little bit more about you guys. I know I read your bios, but let's dive a little bit deeper. So, Miquel, I'm going to start with you first. Can you please tell us about how you got into your current role? And tell us a little about that current role and then how you got to where you are at now.
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I am the global head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Shutterstock. And essentially what that means is that I kind of operate as a center of excellence, or my team operates as a center of excellence, where we work with different departments across the organization to ensure that we're thinking about DEI in everything that we do. I mean, ultimately, my goal is that DEI becomes one of those things that we measure every single project or every single thing that the company does, right? So, when you're establishing KPIs or OKRs, you think about like, what are the things that we need to be thinking about? I want DEI to be one of those things. And so that's kind of my role, to give that kind of strategic advice across the organization overall. My journey into DEI is pretty interesting. So, as you read, my background is in media and communication. So, my first degree there is where I studied, and then I did business at the master's level. And then I started working in companies with doing communications. But my entry into corporate America is kind of what pushed me to think more about DEI, because I'm from Jamaica. Clearly, you can hear an accent. So I'm not originally from States. And so when I came here, I had years of experience. I was pretty young, but I was leaving Jamaica heading comms for a global organization, really. But I could not get a job into corporate America, even with that kind of experience. I had a master's degree and I couldn't get in. I was able to get in through an internship. And after I got in, my career kind of progressed really fast. And so it got me kind of thinking, like, why is it that I had that issue? Because as soon as I got in, I built that network and I was able to move so fast within the organization. So what was preventing me from getting in? And those are the things I started thinking about. And I think that's what led me into DEI over the last couple of years.
I love that. So is that experience was like that heightened experience and looking at the opportunity to make a change so that other people behind you coming up, you're already impacting change and opportunity. I love that. And I think that's so important as, we look at our whys for why we do things that, that drives us to excellence. And you talked about that, having that whole center of excellence from a DEI perspective, which is awesome. So I can see how that has been embedded in all that you do. So Alessandra, I'm going to ask you now, tell me a little bit about your current role and how you got to where you are now.
Sure, my pleasure. First of all, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to be on the other side of the diversity discussion, but bringing also the gender aspect, which is an important one, mainly in tech, as you know. So I started in computer science. I did my degree my bachelor and then my master and my PhDs. I finished my PhD abroad, first in Switzerland, and then I moved to US, where I spent 5 years of my career. At that point, I was in university, but my research was very much applied, funded from company in the Silicon Valley. And then in 2012, I got this opportunity to work with one of the best research center in the telco space, which, as you guys know, has a lot of data. So analytics, AI was really a core. At the time, it was called big data. So it was a really emerging trend in tech. And as I progressed my career, I ended in Bell Labs 8 years total. For 5 years, I was the head of the Global Analytics Research Division and organization across many locations. And I was always called upon, Ale, hire more women. And I was, my team is already the one that has the best gender biased. Why are you asking me to pull out women? I'm not a magician. I don't create pipeline of brilliant candidate from thin air. So the question was wrong. The right question should have been, what are we doing as industry to invest and create a pipeline of candidates that in few years will become the right candidate to apply for those positions. And that's why fundamentally we are here today to ask this question today. What are we doing today to invest in our younger generation and inspire them to enter the tech space? So I started Women in AI as in Ireland. It's a global non-profit organization. I started as ambassador in Ireland. The community went particularly well. So recently I became the global president of this organization. And in the meantime, I left Bell Labs and I moved to Shutterstock, where I found this new family where diversity and inclusion was really at the center of everything we do. And most importantly, I'm in the AI, and you guys have heard so many stories about this technology that has been discriminating, bringing bias to places where we shouldn't have seen that. And therefore, for us, understanding where those problems originate and how we can technically solve those problems is fundamentally important.
I love it. Oh my gosh, because both of you have these problem fixing mentalities, right? And each one of you took it from a different angle as far as, no, there's a problem and I'm going to fix it. And just as far as, Ali, when you were looking at that, it was really around that pipeline issue. It's looking at the question or looking at the problem from a different angle, which is really what diversity is at the end of the day. It's looking at and providing perspective from the perspectives that are not usually given the voice or given the opportunity to have a say and make a decision and also impact change. So I love it. So Ali, I'm going to go back to you as far as what, according to you, is or would be an inclusive metaverse. Like, what does that mean from your perspective?
Sure, that's $1 million question. No, but it's an amazing one. And I think it can be tackled from many different perspectives. So let's do the following. I leave the hardest part to Miquel, the personal, the social, the semantic aspect of it. I want to talk about the technological part of the metaverse, because everyone is so focusing on the experience of the metaverse and how that experience should be inclusive, that people are forgetting about that there is a technology in the middle between me in the real world and the metaverse. So let's talk about this technology. What about people that have no connection? How can the metaverse can be inclusive if some people do not have basic internet? In some country, internet is not as powerful as in other countries. And we know that the metaverse, because it's this fully integrated experience, high definition, with object with whom you can interact and communicate, you need a lot of bandwidth. So you need a stronger network. You don't need just a connection. You need a good connection. And you need possibly unlimited data if you are connecting from your smartphone. Otherwise, after a few minutes, your credit is gone. Bye bye. And if you have an old mobile phone, what about your battery life? It will be drained in few minutes. So, from a technological perspective, we need to design an experience that is accessible even to those that haven't the latest smartphone or aren't connected yet to the 5G network. Because I come from Bell Labs, I've spent 8 years in the telecommunication world, and there are many networks that are 2G. We are talking today about 6G. My colleagues still in Bell Labs are working on the 6G. And in many countries, we were analyzing data coming from a 2G network. A 2G network,
Wow.
believe me, it's a completely different story that what we feel it's normal today to us, it's not normal for many people on Earth. So designing new technology also with an eye or with the openness of trying to create opportunity also for those that haven't gone to the tech world where we live it today. And sometimes the people that design those technology are the people with the latest iPhone, are the people already connected with the 5G network. So it doesn't occur to them. And that's why we need to say, what if I don't have the latest 5G or the latest smartphone?
And I love that because again, I think when we think about inclusivity and design, we do tend to look at the visual aspect of it as and in addition to that side of it, which is equally important, and we're going to dive into that with you, Miquel, in just a second. But I want to pay just credence to what you said around that accessibility side from a technology perspective, and even from a socioeconomic perspective, and how important it is that it's funny because this conversation about inclusivity within the metaverse is getting so meta because it's just like layers and layers of how we need to look at how it is baked into the design, the tech side of the design, as well as the front facing side of the design. So Miquel, same question for you. What, according to you, would be an inclusive metaverse? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I want to pick up on what Alessandra said and what you kind of just expounded on, that I think the technological piece and the social piece are all combined because it's about the design of DEI principles and how you approach that collectively in everything that you do, right? And so the piece about access is critical, but also like on what is the experience of people in the metaverse going to be. And I think in order to create a true inclusive space, it's going to require a change in the way people think. So that's the first space in it, right? Like, as Alessandra pointed out, a lot of people who are designing some of these may have the latest technology or access to the latest technology. What I think is going to be required to create that inclusive space in the metaverse is for them to step back outside of themselves and outside of their situation, which often is described in the DEI world as their privilege, but to think about what about those who don't have the kind of access? Like, how am I creating this in a way that would increase the access across multiple people, right? That most people will be able to have access to this kind of technology. And I think that requires a shift in thinking as opposed to thinking just about what is current and what you have access to, right? So it's a design, I think, approaching design from an inclusive lens. I'm sure somewhere out there there's a description for what that means, right? But inclusion as a design principle is basically what I'm saying that people are going to have to start doing in order to create that inclusive metaverse.
And I love that
I mean,
because it's literally
sorry, one of the things that
good.
always comes up, and Alessandra has pointed out this to me before in conversations that we've had, is, for example, the metaverse always is shown as this visual environment, right? What about people
Mhm.
who are blind or visually impaired? What does the
Mhm.
metaverse look like for them? And
Mhm.
just thinking about that, you wouldn't be, if someone who is able to see, you're not thinking about that off the top of your brain. And so we need
Mhm.
to shift that people are doing that. And you do that, one, by building diverse teams, first of all. So you have different people at the table who are able to contribute that kind of mindset to the conversation, but also
Mhm.
expanding your own kind of thinking, that you're thinking outside of yourselves.
And you think about it right now, as far as like, this is this opportunity to do it right. As far as, this is a wonderful
Yep.
time for this to be happening in that sense, because it can be done right. And this is going to be a part of our world, like it or not. You go into the metaverse kicking and screaming, but you will be there at some point. And at the end of the day, having professionals like yourselves, where you have that diversity mindset, that belonging mindset, that inclusive mindset, and recognizing the power of perspective within that as this is built and developed, and having a voice, and having a strong enough voice to make sure it is heard, and challenging some of what's traditional and easy is incredibly important. So, Alessandra, how can AI be used to create inclusive designing for marketing campaigns? Because now we're seeing it. Let's shift a little bit from the metaverse into marketing campaigns, and using technology to create more inclusive design.
Very, very good question. And again, it's quite of a complex area because there are
Mm-hmm.
many different things that can be done today. So the most important thing is that the visual that are used in campaigns are diverse. So the way data are sourced with diversity in mind, because we cannot always um, give responsibility only to some people in the chain of marketing, those that pick the best ad. What about if we show those people different variant? And there is where AI can comes into. So I say that discrimination has been an historical issue of our society for centuries. It's not started yesterday. However, with the advent of data, we have been able to quantify how bad has been discrimination in so many areas. And today we have metric that are helping us in those index, the equality index and the gender index. It's
Mm-hmm.
those are only measuring what I say is the symptoms, not the cause, but they're helping us to quantify the problem. So with AI and with data today that we can measure and we can understand in places where diversity has not been applied, there is a possibility to encode and require this as a metric in our AI pipeline, so that when we propose possible creatives to creative managers, director, and so on, they can see things that they possibly wouldn't have been looking at. So AI can help us to augment things that we don't know they exist or we couldn't think ourselves, because it's a technology that is faster than what we can do manually. At Shutterstock, we say that if you spend only 1 second on every image at Shutterstock, you will spend 11 years of your life looking at images. Our AI can provide you a smaller view of what we have
Mm-hmm.
in nanosecond. So if that selection it's done properly, it can let you see things that will take years for you to discover.
I love it because it's that discoverability and the ability to find it and use it effectively. And again, not leaving it into one person or a few people's hands who have a bias. We all have a biased perspective, so everybody has a bias when they're choosing. So this allows that to work itself out. Miquel, do you think that in general the tech industry in North America is still struggling with diversity and visualization? And do you have any recommendations of what organizations, specifically the marketing teams, can do to have more inclusive campaigns?
Yeah, I think there is still a struggle. I think in terms of recommendation, my recommendation is usually starts with build a diverse team, because I think that's the first stage of ensuring that there's representation, and then the second step is ensuring that the diverse team is empowered, and that's the inclusion piece where it's not just having the faces at the table and then they have no kind of power in terms of what decisions are made, but you empower the people at the table to be able to challenge you and so on when you're making decisions, so that everything comes out and that everyone agrees as to what the decision is. It's not always going to be a consensus, but at least the voices were given a chance to speak at the table. So that's what I think is the most important thing. And I think the second one, I usually move to principles as opposed to try to be very prescriptive in terms of my recommendation. And the principle is think about DEI as a design principle. When you're doing anything at all, like who am I representing? How and why did I choose to represent that person that way? Or who am I not representing and why I did not? And so what you're doing there is challenging yourself and challenging the people on your team to think outside of what they're used to, think outside of what is easy that comes to them, and always challenge themselves to say to do better and to think about things. So I'm not prescribing that this is the way that you need to do it, but I think once you apply that principle to always question your own decisions and why you're making decisions around people, or certain type of people, I think that will go a long way.
I love it. And both of you, I would like to thank you for joining us in this chat. I have stolen time from your next panel, so I need to give it back because they're already like, share. But this was so good. And the perspectives that you guys have shared, and I know you guys are going to continue the conversation over into the panel. So I will just pause you guys for a second, but you'll be back on stage in just a moment. But thank you for having this conversation and really bringing perspectives that I can tell from myself, there are certain things I didn't even think about. So I hope you guys got some benefit from that. And you know there's more to come. And so I'd like to move into our leadership panel. And you guys are in for a treat because you met Miquel already. And he is our moderator for tonight. So I'm going to be passing it on over to him. But in the meantime, make sure you guys are getting connected on obsidy.com to continue this inclusive, awesome conversation that's happening. And that's it for me. I'm going to move it all over to Miquel, and you guys are going to have a great learning opportunity with this amazing panel. So that's coming up next.
Thank you, Cher. I'm going to try to match your energy, but you were fantastic and such a great host. I wish to be you soon. Let me introduce our outstanding panelists that we have. First up, we have Brandy Nalums, and Brandy is currently a senior business development manager from Amazon Incubator. Her work is focused on helping Black-owned small and medium-sized businesses leverage Amazon's scaling mechanisms to become larger enterprises. Welcome, Randy.
Thanks for having me. Excited for tonight's discussion.
Awesome. And next we have Valerie Phoenix, who is the founder and CEO of Tech by Choice and an engineer manager at Alma. Valerie is passionate about creating secure, human-centered digital experiences. As a successful self-taught developer, Valerie started Tech by Choice to give back to the community that helped her succeed. Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you. Excited to be here and join the conversation about inclusivity in the metaverse.
Thanks, Valerie. And next up, we have Brandon Bastaldo. And Brandon is a production lead at Lablo Digital. He manages a team of production specialists who publish content across 16 plus grocery e-commerce websites, execute A/B testing, and continually roll out new features to enhance their digital shopping journeys. He seeks ways to continually optimize their end-to-end process for content management, deployment for the online grocery department. Welcome, Brandon.
Hey, thank you so much for the warm welcome and really excited to be here today.
Great. And of course, I'm going to re-welcome Alexandra Sala from Shutterstock, who was just on the fireside chat with me and one of my favorite colleagues at Shutterstock. Welcome back.
Thank you, Miquel.
Remember, if you have questions, you can submit in the Q&A section on your screen, and we will do our best to get to them before the end of the session. So I do want to kick off our conversation by first saying Happy Black History Month to everyone. And I wanted to ask the opinion of the panelists how you're thinking now about Black History Month over the last years in terms of recognition and celebration. At Shutterstock, we recently did a survey about how people are thinking about inclusion in marketing. And one of the things that came up was Black Lives Matter and how that completely changed people's perspective around marketing. Are you seeing anything different right now in terms of recognition and celebration for Black History Month? I'm gonna throw this to. What's that?
Okay, I think that there has been, to your point, the pivot point being the murder of George Floyd and the increased attention on Black Lives Matter, a large increase in recognition and celebration over the years. But there is a weird duality, I feel, that we're living in. So as we see a lot of communities really care and invest in Black History Month and, February and being Black 365, we also are facing bills where, voting rights are potentially being reduced, and we're banning books on, race and segregation for them potentially being divisive as opposed to historically accurate. So I don't know, for me, I'm a little less concerned about kind of Pan-African flags hanging in a window and more concerned about the efforts and action behind some of the recognition and celebration happening. So super happy to be celebrating, also hoping that we're all staying aware and staying active and not kind of resting on our laurels, so to speak.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to jump in on that?
For sure, I'd be happy to just pipe or just to speak up a little bit. So, I mean, as a Canadian growing up here in Toronto, Canada, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I learned zero about Black History Month in school. It wasn't even a topic. It wasn't something that we talked about in the school I went to, at least. And so the shift that I've seen my nieces, other younger people having in their institutions or et cetera is pretty monumental. I think there is more awareness, but I think the biggest shift, and probably the one that I've noticed the most, and I think is pretty cool, is seeing how the conversation, I think, has changed within our own community. And what I mean by that is I've definitely noticed a lot of reclamation and, numerous communities where people are starting to actively shift the conversation around Black history from, suffering, slavery narratives, et cetera, to things around, empowerment and what our future looks like for, our culture. So I definitely think that a lot of things that Brandy mentioned is very true. There's some troubling moments, but I think as a community, we've done a great job to push the conversation past our past and move it into the future.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I always say to people when I see anything or need to review anything about Black History Month is that I need to see Black joy. I do not need to always be seeing something else, right? I need to be seeing Black joy in all of this, and how we're talking about Black people need to express that. We do express and we do experience joy. So I'm going to move
I think that...
Go ahead, Valerie.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think that's a very important part. And I think I agree with what everyone else said about Black History Month. The only thing I think that stood out to me this year is the fact that it seems like it's become a marketing tactic. I'm starting to see different brands pop up with marketing for Black History Month, Bath and Body Works being one who came out with a lotion with the kente cloth to support Black History Month, which I don't know, it's very interesting. I agree we should definitely focus on joy and different ways to change the narrative, but also be very aware of what's currently happening.
That's actually a pretty good segue, I think, into the next question that I have around brands that are doing inclusivity well in their marketing. Is there any kind of examples that anyone on this call would like to share of a brand that they think when they saw that ad or campaign, you're like, yep, they got it?
Yeah, I can speak about that. I guess one that immediately stood out for me is Mountain Equipment Co-op. So, a Mountain Equipment Co-op, for those who don't know, is a pretty iconic, I believe, Canadian, I guess, outdoor brand. And so, in 2018, there was quite a bit of controversy around them because they got called out pretty hard for not being inclusive in their imagery. Pretty much every single image that they had advertised with included a lot of white people, and kind of gave people the impression that Black people don't go outside and they don't participate in outdoor activities, right? And so since then, there have been comments from their president, et cetera, about advancing their representation in their imagery. But the two big places that I've noticed a change is, number one, in the imagery, seeing marketing ads that speak to people like me who love to rock climb, love the outdoors, and seeing things that indicate that this is for me as well. But the other big shift and thing that I noticed was there was a really big push at Mountain Equipment Co-op to actually get more diversity within the boardrooms, which I think, Miquel, like you had brought that up before, that's really where those conversations start, is the people sitting around the table developing that marketing campaign and saying, this is who we need to speak to as well, or specifically so.
In general, I have seen...
Specifically, I love Amazon's Remarkably Black campaign. As the Amazon employee on the call, want to plug that, but authentically, genuinely love it. But the brand of Rihanna is getting it right for me, whether that be Fenty, her makeup, or her lingerie line. Cher brought up at the top of the call that inclusivity is not just about race. There's age and economics and income and language and education. And when I see some of the ads, she is really, her team is really getting it right. I mean, different levels of ability, people who are missing an arm, people of different sizes, different shapes. It's really inclusive. It's really great to see. And as a consumer who is, fully abled in some of that way, for example, it helps me to be able to see I resonate with that person. I don't look or feel or have that same experience, but that lingerie looks good on her. Like, I may want that. And being able to just make that consumer connection and know that people across various spectrums, you can still relate to them, has been eye-opening for me as a marketing and communicator.
I think that's really cool that you brought up Rihanna, because that's definitely my go-to when I think of marketing that gets it right with being inclusive. I remember the beauty industry is not one that is very centered on diversity, or it hasn't been for a long time. But when she came out with her makeup brand, it was one of the first times that I saw my skin shade, and it wasn't one of the darkest ones, or it wasn't one that I had to mix together to find. I could just go to the store and find one that fit my skin tone. And she did so. I remember looking at the marketing for her makeup line, and never did she ever say, like, this is a diverse line. This is an inclusive line. This is a line that's focused on all the things that we like to use in the tech industry to show people that we're different. Instead, from her perspective, and what her team did is they built something that encompass their values, and they let that speak for itself. And so when we do talk about her work and her products, we say it's diverse and it's inclusive, and we're able to give that product that name instead of her saying, like, she did this, she made it perfect. And I think that's key when it comes to marketing for any brand out there. It's not so much the brand saying that they are diverse, it's the consumers being able to see what their values are from a Instagram post, from what they put up on their website. And if our as consumers can say that this is a diverse and inclusive brand, then I think that's when you know that the marketing team got it right.
Yep.
Love that.
Yeah, I think, there are a couple of good points coming up, but I think one of the most critical piece is there are two things that as I learn more about the marketing and advertising industry that's usually involved, right? And there's the sourcing of the content itself, like who is involved in creating that content that will create the actual appropriate representation, right? Because if you have a lot of people who do not come from the community creating the content, usually the case is that the how it's represented is not accurate, right? And so you have to be figuring out what to use, right? Because if marketers use that in their campaign, then the community will say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you really would use something like that in your campaign," right? And so to me, the problem, and I approach DEI a lot as a problem, is twofold. One is around the sourcing and the creation of the content, right? And then the second piece is the behavior that's involved. Alessandra, I actually want to throw this directly to you here because in our world at Shutterstock, we kind of look at both of those problems. One is the creation of the content to say, do we have enough diverse content in our collection, and how do we fix that, right? And that's something that we can help to control. But I think there's a second piece of it, which is the technical piece of it, where people who use our platform to find information, the more they search for a particular kind of content, the more that shows up and everything else gets hidden. How can we use technology to kind of address that problem so that what marketers see is representative of the world?
Yeah, great question. So let me address the two pieces of this discussion because they're critically important. Sourcing the data with diversity, it's the first most important step, because if you don't have diverse data, everything you do afterwards won't result in the impact and effect that you mean. So today we leverage a network of 1.9 million different contributor from more than 150 countries around the world. And we ingest more than 1 million new new creatives per week. So trying to keep always fresh and constantly source from the diversity of perspective that 1.9 million people can bring to the platform. But then the point is, when you have all this content and you bring in the platform and the majority of users are limited in a specific portion of this catalog, then those creatives becomes very popular. And one of the technological problems of the majority of search engine that you can experience today, whatever is popular is always presented. Our job at Shutterstock is to discover the diverse, the unpopular, and bringing up front into the picture to show that diverse perspective, because otherwise we tend to all standardize our thinking to what is supposed to be the beautiful, the accepted. And going back to the discussion before, what brand have done for ages in the beauty, in the fashion, creating a stereotype of what beautiful meant, and always going to those standards until the point where that beautiful stereotype was challenged, and some of those brands had the braveness to bring diversity into their marketing campaign, into their fashion show, and so on. So bringing the unseen, the less common, the less popular, which should be part of the discussion.
Yeah, and I think, Alessandra, a piece of that is the first stage of the who the content creators are, right? And how do we ensure that we're investing in a diverse group of content creators? Brandon, you mentioned earlier about the brand that I forget the name of now, who suddenly was showing like climbers who are black in their campaign. How could you talk about the importance of doing something like that, and how do we get access and ensure that we bridge this gap between content creators who are from diverse backgrounds and the access that they have in the marketing industry?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, firstly, just to talk about the impact is huge. As we all know, or a lot of people on this call, because we brought it up in various points, seeing someone who looks like you or has the same, kind of background you do, doing something that either you want to do or have been thinking about doing or have been trying to do is huge. It's a game changer. It makes you believe in yourself more. It makes you understand that it's possible, and that there's space for you in an environment where maybe you're not sure if there was before. And so, for me, seeing those kind of ads, beyond beyond the representation of it, I think it's a lot more monumental. It's inspiring to think that, hey, this company that traditionally is only really marketed to certain type of people is really trying to change the game here and trying to up what they're doing so that they can speak to the real demographics of people who are using their products. And so, to answer your other question, just about how to really connect those people making the content with the actual people in the room deciding what goes into that campaign. I think it really comes down to exposure and opening doors for people, taking a chance, or doing kind of like Alessandra said, looking for the different. What does this person have to offer? Because we're not doing anything like what they're doing. Really picking out those people. I think a lot of times in business, we tend to shy away from those individuals or that look because it's seen as risky. It's something that we haven't done before, or we're not really sure if this fits with our vision of our brand. But I really think that it's about, again, like reformatting that vision in the boardrooms to say, hey, we need to recognize that our brand can't be completely blinders on, looking only at these people. We need more diverse backgrounds, diverse ethnicities, and walks of life and stories to make things happen.
Yeah, and I've heard the reference of this doesn't align with our brand, and my reaction at the time I heard it was kind of, okay, so probably you need to be rethinking what your brand is, because at this stage, if your brand is not diverse, it shouldn't exist. So it's kind of thinking about the way that you're reframing your own brand, as I said earlier, just changing your whole mindset. Um, but a lot of times it comes up that it's hard to measure this. So my question is there a benchmark or measure for inclusivity? So when designers are doing this, whether or not they're creating products or they're creating campaigns, they can think about this and say, am I actually being inclusive? Valerie, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think some of the things that you pointed out before is asking who's being left out and why are people being left out is a really great place to start. But I think when we are creating content and we're trying to share a story about a product or a community or whatever it may be, we have to understand first, what is the story we're trying to tell? What is the goals we want to have? What is the impact we want to have when people interact with this content? And I like to start there. List out our goals for some of the work that I do with Tech by Choice. If we're doing a new program to expand and make sure people know about different roles in tech that's not just coding based, I will have a benchmark of, okay, well, what would a good rollout of this marketing plan look like? who would we interact with, and create these case studies. And we try to focus on making sure that the individuals we want to impact don't look like the tech minority, right? And so we have these metrics of, we want to get this person from this demographic, and we want to make sure that when people come in and they hit our website, they're coming in from websites like the YMCA. They may have found us through the local library, places that most people, typically, if you're navigating the tech space, wouldn't come from. So for me, it's again starting with that why, understanding what your story is supposed to be, and understanding what your impact is, and create metrics around that that is easy for you to track, so you can see if you're actually having the input or the impact you would like to have.
Brandy, I'd love your
I
thoughts.
love what
Valerie's
Valerie
point,
said.
I would say I'll be quick. Similar to her point, I'd add start with your customer in mind. So I don't know that there's a pure percentage of your marketing campaign that should lean to, any specific demographic group or ability group. But if you're starting with your customer in mind, who uses your software, who buys your product, then your marketing should reflect them. I think that there is like your brand and lifestyle and also your product, and not to brand drop, but like a brand that gets that right for me is like a Telfar. It's a luxury product. They are selling a luxury aesthetic, and that can be completely independent of who's holding that bag. If you are holding their bag, you are luxury because their product is luxury. So if you start with that customer and, like you said, Valerie, the story you want to tell, the vibe you want to set, maybe to speak a little more colloquially, like you're going to meet with your desired customer because you started with them in mind.
Love
Alessandra?
what you said too. Yeah, there is just one more point. I think there is also a social responsibility that we can all play. And we have seen that for women in AI, and what we have been doing for the past 5 years is helping. So at the beginning, we were seeing all those panels with only men, and it was the standard. Women weren't invited to many panels or talks or on stage. And when those things were publicized, we were just leaving comment like it would have been good to have Elizabeth Smith on this panel as well, as she is an expert on this topic. So just pointing out that there were women listening and watching, which didn't feel themselves represented, and they were experts in the community that could have been expert panel of that discussion. In the same vein, I think there is a social responsibility we can play for many other diversity and inclusion opportunities. Brands are constantly looking at their positive resonance with customer. When customers start to point mistakes or point things to improve, they actually take those comments in great consideration. And sometimes it seems that those big brands don't. But from us that are within those tech company, every time there is a comment from one of our customer or user, it's escalated immediately to every leader in the organization why the things happened. So I think there is a natural way just to point out opportunities or different things that haven't been addressed yet, because those companies will listen.
It's a good point, Alessandra. We are talking about the metaverse, so I do want to move into that to see if, I've always said that we are at the stage where there is an opportunity to create a truly inclusive metaverse. I'd be curious from all the panelists, what does that look like to you? And how do we do it?
Yeah, I can jump in if that helps. I can't speak holistically on it. Metaverse is probably a really big space, endless, so to speak. But I think somebody brought up something interesting in this conversation. I don't remember who it was exactly, so sorry. But they brought up the whole, a lot of times we think about the front end experience of a lot of digital journeys, right? The front end facing part of the website, what the VR looks like when you have the headset on and you're viewing it. I can say from being on the other side of that, being the person who's inputting the data or information, building some of those experiences. I think a huge part of it, number one, for kind of in creating a more inclusive space is allowing people, so whether that's developers or developers really for VR, making sure that they have the tools that they need to create tools for other people to represent themselves. And so what that means, for example, is having multiple skin tones available to people, not labeling a skin tone that's nude as that's beige, things like that make it harder for people to say, hey, this is really who I am or who I'm trying to be. And I can't do that because I simply don't even have the space to do that. The other thing I was going to mention that I thought is probably pretty useful, because this definitely ties into that inclusive space is authenticity, and making space for people, authentic space, a place where they can feel comfortable. So whether that means, creating experiences that mirror real life experience that people live every day, the type of place that a certain person would go so that to be with people that they like or that are like them, making sure that those are actually translated to the metaverse is, I think, huge in an authentic way. So
It's a really good point, Brandon. Does anyone else want to
Yeah,
chime in on that?
I'll jump in. I think there's a lot of really good points there, especially when we talk about making imagery or making these characters available for people to relate to. Uh, I'll speak a little bit more about like the NFT and Web3 space. One of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of these characters that people are building, if they're humans and not like cats or anything like that, they tend to just change the skin tone and let that be the representation of other groups. When we know that when we look at people, it's more than just your skin tone that tells you your background, right? It's the shape of your eyes, it's the shape of your nose, it's the texture of your hair. And so when we look at these projects, and a lot of the times NFTs are the way that people enter into this space and understand the metaverse, we want to make sure that we're exposing people to projects that are thinking about diversity in a way that is not just changing the skin tone of a character. There are projects out there that are really centered around diversity and making sure that people are well represented. And for me, those are the projects that should be highlighted. A lot of people will talk about some of the cool cats or the bored apes, but to me, it's projects like the Onaji project, which is created by a Black artist who has been representing all types of Black experiences for the last 10 years, who has now moved into the space and doing the exact same thing there. There's projects like the one that Tech by Choice is working on, Community, where we're doing the same thing. We're taking images of people and representing all the different types of people that you can encounter in the tech space. And it's not just like the standard tech majority images that you see on a lot of these billboards for the big tech companies. It's people of all skin tones, all different eye shapes, all different hair textures, and shapes of noses. So I think when we are creating this metaverse, we have a lot of different entry points, whether it be VR or whether it be the NFT space, to allow people to really market and brand themselves through these communities. So being able to point out and connect people to projects and communities that are focusing on representing each other, we will show that this is the way that we want to navigate this space. We will show that with our choices that we interact with these projects, that this is what we want from the metaverse and let that be the standard versus some of the other things and the other projects that will put diversity as a afterthought and try to fix it later. So I
Yeah.
think as we navigate this space, that's what we can think about.
Yeah, and it goes to our core thing that usually comes up with diversity and inclusion, right? Who gets celebrated and why? And if you're at the beginning of creating this metaverse and there are only certain groups of people who are being celebrated, we really need to start questioning that to ensure that everyone gets a fair share and everyone gets celebrated based on what they're contributing.
Miquel, I want to jump in here because we are putting a lot of emphasis on the entry point in the metaverse and the representation that we give to character in the metaverse. And I feel that industry is actually paying a lot of attention to that. However, everyone is stopping the thinking at that point. The fact I'm represented correctly, it's only one step in a long journey of an inclusive experience. For example, and what I'm really getting at is the behavior in the metaverse that has to be inclusive. The fact you will be represented precisely or accurately based on your standard, it's one thing. But then the experience enable and protect you to be properly included in the experience. We have seen, for example, in one of the first launch of the one of the metaverse experience that happened just a couple of weeks ago, a woman got arrested in 2 minutes of her joining the metaverse experience. She was horrified. She left, she complained. Obviously, it was public news very quickly. But whatever we build, it just doesn't only need to represent us as we enter, it needs to protect us in our unique representation of experiences that we want to bring into those platforms, which possibly is not the worst of what we do in the real life.
Okay. Yeah, so essentially it's not just the entry point, which sometimes happen with the diversity. So you do have the diversity at the entry of it, but then the inclusion piece is missing, and that's a problem too. So it's just building inclusivity throughout the entire process is what we need to be focusing on, and that requires to ensure that people who are building this metaverse are diverse. First of all, I'm always going to say that, and that people have equal shares at the table, or more equitable shares rather. So whatever that person needs at that table is what they should be provided with, rather than equal shares at the table. I know we're running out of time, but there is a question that came in that I really wanted to ask. Because this is really important for us to address. It says, with many articles on AI algorithm not recognizing or even mislabeling people of color, how can we improve the technology to benefit everyone? I think, does anyone want to take that question quickly?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question. The fact that AI has made some horrifying mistake in the past, it doesn't mean that it's a technology that has fundamental limit. So it's a technology that learns from data, and if the data were not representing everyone equally, therefore you have some error as outcome of this technology. Today we are working on many different dimensions, but most importantly on having data sets that are represented not just of white and black people, but from ethnicity as a general concept, gender as a general concept, not just men and women, age group, and being diverse in everything those data represent. And then on the algorithm side, improving the technology, constantly pushing the boundary to create technology that is more robust, is more secure, and so on. So there is a lot of research that is going on and has been going on in the past many years to address those issues that we have seen, and it's not stopping because it's an evergreen problem.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's critical to that too, Alessandra, that we have to be careful of overall is that a bigger data set doesn't naturally mean accurate representation, because if it's pulling all the way from
Correct.
the internet, it's pulling from some of the darkest places on the internet, and it's not showing the accurate representation. And what you feed in is what you're kind of going to get out. So part of our responsibility is to ensure that what we're feeding in is also accurate, and what we're feeding in is also accurate representative of how people should be shown, right?
And you are so correct. We spend 80% of our AI project time on making sure that the data are the data set that we really want those algorithms to see. So, and only 20% of our time really on the algorithmic side to complete a project. So there is a lot of attention that today is well placed on quality data. At Shutterstock, we don't talk about data, we talk about the quality of data. Prove me the quality. I want to audit the data. I need to be sure the data are good to be fed to those algorithms.
Yeah. Well, thank you for
I
that,
think that's
Alessandra.
amazing,
And
but if you,
go ahead, Valerie.
sorry. I think one thing to point out there too, because being someone who may not be able to see the data that's being analyzed as a consumer, there are always the questions of like, how do I know this data or the algorithm doesn't have the bias of individuals? And I think that's a very valid question. It makes things very, very scary, especially with some of the documentaries that have been coming out around AI. And what I like to tell people is that there are a lot of people thinking about ethics when it comes to AI, and there are different departments and organizations that are coming up with standards on how AI should be implemented so that even the most marginalized people they're trying to reduce as much harm. So that way we can have a little bit more trust in these technologies as we build it out. With a lot of the things that we're doing in the metaverse, we'll rely on this more and more. So we will start to see more conversations come up around ethics and AI in the metaverse as we expand. So there are people out there that are working very hard to make sure that this is going to be a safe, secure, and ethical process. But we need to continue to ask these questions and just make sure that things are being built for the most marginalized groups.
I agree, Valerie, on that. I think I always say this with DEI, I think principles are so important that everyone that's working on, let's say, AI technology within whatever company that you are, need to be aligned with the same kind of principles. Regardless of where your background is, you need to be aligned with that principle that you're using to create AI. And part of that has to be DEI, right? So you need to align with that in order to work on a project like something that is, because otherwise it's going to be not a good thing. We are out of time, but I do want to ask one last question to all of the panelists. Like, we've shared a lot tonight. What is one thing you would like our audience to remember from this conversation? And I'm going to start with Brandon.
Sure. Let's see if I can do my best to wrap a few things together. But first and foremost, authenticity matters. It's something, ironically, or not ironically, but no pun intended, it can't be faked. And people remember things, and people can smell when something is not real. And so it pays, and both from a branding standpoint, but then also from an investment in your company, to hire people who are authentic, who are trying to really look for those experiences, and trying to make them resonate with people as best as they can. The other thing that I wanted to really quickly share is, for anyone on this call who needs to hear this message, is don't give up. In general, if you're chasing your career right now, anytime you feel the mountain's too big or the cards are stacked against you, just really remember that Your experience is unique, and in the right situation, your voice and your talent will be seen and heard. So keep going, and that's kind of my wrap up, I guess.
Thank you. Valerie?
Yeah, I really like that wrap up. I'll try to do something as meaningful as that. For me, I think one of the things that I like to tell people to be mindful of is anyone who is fighting for diversity, they're going to fight for you to have as much joy, and they will center your joy, and they will try their best to reduce as much harm. So they're not centering your pain all the time. And if you ever find yourself in a space that is constantly centering pain of marginalized people, that typically isn't the space for you. And there are other spaces out there that will be supportive of your journey and also like be there to celebrate your wins and center your joy.
Love that. Alessandra?
I like to say social responsibility again. Let's inspire the younger generation and bring them into our journey because we need them. We need broader representation, and only if we're able to inspire those minority community to come into this journey, we will all be better together.
Thank you. And we started with Brandy and we're ending with you. We love you. So, Brandy?
Such great work from my peers on this panel. That's a lot of pressure. I guess just two quick things to add to the authenticity point that Brandon made. Intentionality is key. And then there was someone in the chat who brought up consumer spending power. So I just say that, visual representation and diversity initiatives are just good business acumen. I mean, when you think about, Alexander, to your point around the youth, we know that Gen Z is like the most diverse of generations that have come. They are shopping inclusive. They are shopping sustainability. They are voting with their dollars in inclusivity. And so brands and service providers, software creators should absolutely pay attention to that. So be intentional, and it just makes good business sense to be diverse.
Thank you. It makes complete sense. It is the license to operate. If you're not doing it, you're going to be out of business. And if you're not doing it authentically too, people will know because people have good BS sniffers. Thank you all for being on this panel. You have been fantastic. I learned a lot, and it was great to have this conversation with you. I'm going to turn this back over to Cher just to sign us out.
I definitely didn't smell any BS in this conversation. What a fantastic, amazing conversation. There's so many layers that I know I walked away with not even thinking about before, but all of a sudden it's blown my universe as we take a look at this meta universe. And this, as you can see, inclusivity and representation matters, especially through the lens of the metaverse. And I'm excited to see the changes that are happening and that are going to happen in the future, especially as we consider these lenses that are absolutely necessary as we construct and have a voice in this new world that we are building together. So again, tons of gems dropped tonight, serious insight. And I want to make sure this conversation, which is incredibly important, it is our future now. So make sure you continue the conversation over at obsidian.com. What a safe space to really share and go deeper on this conversation. We have a lot of resources that were in the chat. So if you felt that those resources were benefited, share them on obsidian.com. So make sure you keep that party going and the conversation happening because it is going to impact us now and in our future. So Miquel, you did a fantastic job moderating that panel. Again, I just learned so much. And Alessandra, Valerie, Brandy, and Brandon, thank you so much for bringing your knowledge to us because what you have to say matters and it's impacting us. So thank you as well. Shutterstock, thank you for being our partner for tonight. We benefited so much from this conversation as well. You in the audience, thank you for blowing up in the chat. And again, take this conversation over to obsidian.com and continue it because it is absolutely necessary. So as well, we want to know how necessary it is because we're going to send you a survey. So we want to find out what you think and make sure you fill it out. And thank you so much for taking the time tonight to join us and learn from us. And again, I'm going to say it like a million times because this conversation is so necessary. So make sure you take it over to obsidian.com and connect and grow this conversation. And of course, like I said, we value your feedback. So don't forget to sign up at obsidian.com if you haven't already. And thank you for joining us tonight. And we'll see you next week.